طيب 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 clear بسم الله تفضل يا عندك ها خلي السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So first and foremost, Bismillah, first and foremost is we live in a world of many contradictions and hypocrisies. Many contradictions and hypocrisies. And from those contradictions and hypocrisies are that you have freedom of speech. And it's not about agreeing, it's not about right or wrong, but it's about respecting someone else's view, opinion, someone else's feelings, with the condition that they don't do harm and damage to the next fellow American. That's what it's supposed to be, okay? The land of the free and the home of the brave. I myself, I have several family members that fought wars overseas, Vietnam and Korea. So when we talk about the American dream, the American way, America is not China, it's not Russia, America is not overseas, Middle East, this is America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Don't you think and feel that it's a little hypocritical for me to claim to be an American, believe in the American way, and that from the most important values of this country is freedom. And you have the ability to say what you want to say, and believe what you want to believe, and practice what you want to practice as long as it doesn't go against the laws and the legislation. But when it comes to certain topics, certain discussions, the moment you go outside of the box, or the moment you say, I hear what these people are saying, but I disagree. I hear what you're pushing and throwing, through your media, through your movies, through your books, but I say no, I don't agree with that. And the moment that I say that I disagree, this is my opinion, this is what I feel, this is my reservation, I'm now canceled, or I'm now threatened, or I'm now visited. People that were behind me, rallying me, sponsoring me, say, we take back the money that we gave to you because you said something which was displeasing, or you said something which was uncomfortable, or you said something that goes against this one's agenda and this one's feelings and this one, etc. Don't you find that a little hypocritical? If I have freedom of speech, that means I'm supposed to have what? Freedom of speech. Now, a person who says something in a hateful manner, a disrespectful manner, words that incite other people to do acts of violence, so on and so forth, that's not what we're discussing. But if someone comes to me and they ask me a personal opinion, what do you think and feel about this person or this movement? And this is what I think, this is what I feel. How are you an American? And how are you foremost? Not about Islam, not about Muslim, an indigenous Muslim, a migrant, immigrant Muslim. I come from a Somali background, I come from a Black American background, but we're talking about just America, the United States. So why is the Muslim pointed out, ostracized? Why is the Muslim threatened and called bad names for saying what he or she believes? Something is off, and something isn't adding up. Muslim and courage are supposed to go hand in hand. Muslim and being honest, speaking your mind, don't hold back any punches, it's supposed to go hand in hand. The United States, America, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, is supposed to go hand in hand. But this topic, this discussion, this movement, this agenda, this orientation, you aren't allowed to speak your mind. You aren't allowed to say what you feel, to say what you believe. You aren't allowed to disagree. And the one who's interviewing you, the journalist, is throwing you loaded questions. And he's raising his eyebrow. And he's saying, really? How could you say that? Did you say that? So on and so on and so forth. So as an American, you should be disturbed and offended. Wait a second, my grandfather didn't fight and die for you to raise your eyebrow at me. I haven't harmed you. I haven't disrespected you. I was nothing but honest. You asked me about something and I told you. So how is that the American way? So that's food for thought when it comes to this topic, LGBTQ, and other topics, all right? Me going out in the street, doing harm to someone, violating someone's property, breaking the law, has nothing to do with me being open and upfront and honest about what you've asked me. So if that is the law of the United States, if that's how things are supposed to be, you're supposed to be honest, and you have the freedom to be honest, then what do you think about al-Islam? All right? So these are a few introductory points with regards to this very hairy and this very sensitive, this topic that gets people's, whatever in a bunch really, really, really quick. And if you say the wrong thing in the wrong way, at the wrong time, to the wrong person, all of your followers that were once behind you, they will be taken away from you and stripped from you. And obviously the truth can never ever be submissive and subservient to anybody's desires. وَلَوْ اتَّبَعَ الْحَقُّ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ لَفَسَدَتِ السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ وَمَنْ فِيهِنَّ. If the truth were to follow their desires, everything will be ruined. So the truth and facts, they don't need to be apologetic. They don't need to be politically correct. You never ever have to apologize for speaking the truth, and you never have to apologize for speaking your mind. I apologize to you for offending you, and you feel some type of way about what I said, but I said what I believed, and I don't apologize about that. But I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm sorry that my words angered you. I am. I don't want to disturb you, but I don't take back what I said. So this is the proper mindset, I would say, of two worlds that are meeting up. And those two worlds are the worlds of Islam and the world of America and the United States. Anyone forcing you, bullying you, pressuring you to think and to feel otherwise, for sure they are not following Islam, and they're not following the laws and the ways and the traditions of this country that is supposed to be full of brave, free men. Everybody on the same page what I'm saying or not? So oftentimes, people, they feel pressured to water down the truth, or they feel pressured to agree and to comply, and they feel pressured to, appease the masses, and they think that that's wisdom, hikmah, and they think that that is balance. The truth meeting the falsehood halfway is balance, and that's incorrect. That's wrong in Islam. And that's also wrong according to what and who? This country. And why those forefathers fought and died and sacrificed to establish what they believed was home of the brave and land of the free and a home of the brave. All right? So that's first and foremost. That's food for thought. So what I believe in my religion, if an act is impermissible, how is that extreme? And how am I being ostracized and criticized for me telling you what my religious belief is? All right? So, at the end of the day, it is what it is, and we know this. A person who has the truth with him, there's no need for him to threaten. And there's no need for him to force and coerce people to believe in him. So if this is okay, if this is acceptable, if this is natural, if there's nothing wrong with it, why do you have to force and threaten people to accept it? Once again, something is what? At least off. It's a bit off. With regards to coercion, I'm not allowed to force and coerce you with my beliefs and my way of life. How is it allowed for you to do the same? How is it allowed for you to do the same? And you're forcing me to agree with you and to comply with you. And you're forcing me to see eye to eye with your values concerning men, concerning women, concerning children, concerning one's sexual orientation, etc. How is that American? How is that constitutional? How are you forcing your way on me? And if I don't agree with you, I'm an extremist, I'm a fundamentalist, I'm a zealot, I'm a hate monger, I'm a hate preacher. Oh, wait a second. That's not the American way. So I would advise Muslims, the leaders, and I would advise the 9 to 5 Muslim, the layman, the laywoman, to learn and to study. To learn and to study Islam, and to learn and to study your environment and where you are. You can't force me to agree with you, and you can't force me to raise my children in a manner that you want, just like I can't do the same. So let's make an example of this. There are many people who think and feel that hijab, the modest clothing that men and women are supposed to wear, the modest clothes, the types of clothing that men and women are supposed to wear, but specifically women, is oppressive. The rule that states that a woman who is of age, she has to cover her hair. She cannot wear tight clothes. She cannot wear transparent and translucent clothes. She must wear loose, baggy, modest clothing. They say that's oppressive. And that is tyrannical. That's wrong to force a woman to cover up. And she should have the freedom and the free will to dress how she pleases. No problem. But when I cut on the television, when I look at my phone, when I look on the front or the back of a box of cereal, when my children watch cartoons, when I go to the gas station, my son, my daughter, this one, they're being forced, verbally, directly or indirectly, explicitly or inexplicitly, to take off their clothes. And you have to be naked. And if you don't expose yourself, if you don't wear revealing clothes, if you don't wear skin-tight clothes, then something is wrong with you. And you have something to hide. And you're this, and you're that, and you're this, and you're that, i.e., is it not just as oppressive to force someone to take their clothes off as it is oppressive to force a woman to dress? And explain, how does that work? You're telling me that my daughter has to be naked. And I say, for argument's sake, daughter, you have to cover up. Aren't we both oppressive? Aren't we both forcing our will upon this woman with regards to her attire? And the same applies to LGBTQ, to the list of those alphabets. So therefore, you have to accept my way and my practice. And I say your way and your practice cannot be accepted. So I'm hateful, I'm a zealot, I'm a bigot, I'm a fanatic for my way, and you are what? You are as well. So once again, something is off. Something isn't adding up and something isn't making sense. So what is the ruling in Islam for a Muslim to practice homosexuality? What is the ruling of al-Islam? What does Islam say about same-sex marriages, same-sex relationships? What does Islam say about a person changing his or her gender? What does Islam teach us with regards to uniform and outfit and clothing? Can a man wear the clothing of a woman, and can a woman wear the clothing of a man? What does Islam say about that? Before we even go that far, this is America. You can't force me to believe what you want me to believe. You can't force me to propagate what you want me to propagate. And true journalism is a reporter, is a camera, is a microphone of someone who goes to a country, a location, he does an interview, they ask questions, they record, and they publish. That's journalism. Journalism isn't filming what you want to film. Journalism isn't asking a loaded question, a setup question, and raising the eyebrow when you don't get the response that you are planning to hear. So it is unfair and it is disrespectful to the art of journalism. It's unfair and it's disrespectful to my grandfather, my uncle, to me, to this one who fought in Afghanistan, who fought in Korea, who fought in Vietnam, who fought in World War II, who fought in this war and who died in this war. How is it fair to them for us to relinquish the values and the principles that they died for? Something isn't right. So the moral of the story, the point I'm trying to get across is when we talk about LGBTQ, is the first rule in my book is never allow someone to punk you, and never allow someone to corner you, and never allow a person to believe and to accept what they want you to. Why? Because that isn't Islam, and secondly, that isn't what? That isn't the American way. That's not what this country is supposed to stand on, forcing people and coercing people to have a set of values and morals. So that's first and foremost. Now, if you want to get technical, what does Islam say about men and men, women and women? Is it okay? Is it acceptable? Is it a sin if I'm naturally attracted to a man? Is it a sin for a woman to say, I don't find men attractive? My whole life, I've always felt beauty in fellow females. a woman is softer and kinder and sweeter, she's better, I was never attracted to a man. Is that a sin? Is it a sin for me to speak about how I feel? Is it a sin for me to act upon how I feel? Is it a sin to practice that type of relationship? What does Islam say about these things? The answer to all of these questions are crystal clear. And that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, is that He created the human race, the black man, the white man, the yellow man, the red man, all of the human beings from an original man and from an original woman. Never ever in the Quran does it state from the same sex and the same gender. So what does a Muslim feel and believe about same-sex relationships and marriages? It's not a scholastic debate. It's nothing to talk about. It's nothing perplexing. There is no difference of opinion or second view. It's crystal clear, common sense. The rulings of marriage, the rulings of divorce, the rulings of a wali, the rulings of a mahar, the rulings of so on and so forth, it's always based off of man and woman. So any other movement or any other ideology or any other pushing of a gender is un-Islamic. End of discussion. That's plain and simple. What about Sodom and Gomorrah? The people of Lut, fire and brimstone. They were hijackers. They were raping men, sodomizing men. And I haven't raped this man, nor have I sodomized him. He's just my husband. With we have a consensual relationship. That's why those people were destroyed. We don't have to go that far. We don't have to talk about Lut and the people of Lut. We don't have to discuss that. The only thing that we have to do is discuss Adam and his female wife. And the children, وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً. End of discussion. All right? If you want to talk about this from a scientific standpoint, if you talk about biology, if you talk about the human body and the human mind, so on and so forth, when you go through puberty and you learn about sexuality, whether it's in school, through your parents, talking about the birds and the bees, you read a book, you watch a movie, you watch this, whatever you learn about sexuality and sex. If you look at the human body, you'll realize and you'll understand every single aspect of sexuality, 1 + 1 = reproduction. Everything is made for the purpose of reproduction. Why and how does a man become stimulated? What happens to his body when he becomes stimulated? What exits and leaves his body when he's stimulated? How is a woman stimulated and aroused? Everything is based off of the ease and the facilitation of what? Of conception. From A to Z. Bring me one aspect of sexuality that doesn't pertain to reproduction. So scientifically, naturally, how are you arguing with me and telling me that this is how it should be, or at least this is how it can be? But the science that you claim to believe in, and you claim to prove that there's no religion, that there's no God, that science that you have blind faith in clearly proves and shows the exact opposite of what you're forcing me to believe. And you claim to be a person of science. Once again, something is what? At least what? It's off with your argument. End of discussion. Something's off. All right. Thirdly, for me to avoid you, I'm not going to speak with you, but instead I'm going to speak directly to your child. I'm going to force my views and my values upon your child without your consent, without your permission, without your acceptance. Is that moral? Is that ethical? What is the ruling on abusing children, violating children, trafficking children, enslaving children, forcing a child to do labor for you before they allow it at that set age? Is that right or wrong in the United States? It's wrong, right? To agendify a child is wrong. To objectify a child. Why? Because a child's mind is presupposed, it's incomplete. It hasn't reached full maturity yet. That child isn't old enough and experienced enough to make certain life-changing decisions. Explicit adult contact, parental advisory, so on and so forth. Why is that there? To warn people that children are not to be exposed to certain things. Right? Can we agree on this or disagree on this? So how is it not acceptable for you to speak to my child, to talk to my child, to allow my child to make life-changing decisions without my permission and without my consent as a parent or a guardian. Once again, that is unconstitutional. Once again, that's unethical. Once again, that is against the way of how things are supposed to be, and not just according to Islam. So the point that I'm trying to make is, speaking on LGBTQ, there is a spiritual aspect, a spiritual discussion, which I think is beyond clear. For a Muslim to believe that he is allowed, and there's nothing wrong with him enjoying the passion, love, and romance with another man. For a Muslim who reads the Quran, not the Hadith, just the Quran, to think that it is okay and acceptable and pleasing to Allah for two women to be lovers. If we have to sit down and argue over that and debate over that, then we are in serious trouble as Muslims. A doctor, a PhD holder, he makes an argument and a discussion that there's no sin in that and there's nothing in the Quran to prove that that's impermissible. What did the Arabs, they said in a lot of poetry, فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَصِحُ فِي الْأَذْهَانِ شَيْءٌ إِذَا احْتَاجَتِ النَّهَارُ إِلَى دَلِيلِ. Nothing is possible mentally if you say, what's the proof for the sun? Where's the sun? We need a dalil that there's a such thing as a sun. Something so blatant, so obvious, so big right in front of your eyes. If you need a dalil for that, لا يصح في الأذهان شيء, then nothing is correct. So that's my personal opinion with regards to LGBTQ from an Islamic perspective. How are we arguing and debating about this issue of homosexuality, of being queer, of changing your gender, so on and so forth? How are we having a debate in Islam as Muslims on gender roles and equality or inequality between sexes? How are we even having this debate? And we're reading the same book. That's first and foremost. Speaking on LGBTQ from a social standpoint or even a political standpoint, right? A reporter or a journalist, they ask a Muslim cleric, is it a sin to be a homosexual in the United States? Is it immoral to do this? Oh, slow down. Sin, moral, immoral, none of them are political terms or political words. There's no sin in politics, because politics and religion are supposed to be what? Two different entities. Two different entities. So I can't mix the two, but you can? Nah, something isn't right. Something isn't making sense. So therefore, a Muslim is supposed to have an identity. You're supposed to be unique. And you're supposed to be dignified. And you're supposed to take pride in your identity. And you're supposed to stick up your head high in the air for being a Muslim and saying La ilaha illallah. And no one or nothing is supposed to come and force you and corner you to lose your Islamic identity. That's first and foremost. End of discussion. And if me holding on to my Islamic identity, if that's being extreme, if that's me being a fundamentalist, if that's me being a Wahhabi, if that's me being a this and a that, then so be it. So be it. Call me what you want. Call me what you like. But I have to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's unlawful for me to water down the truth. And it's unlawful for me to say something that pleases the people at the expense of displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the people. So it is upon us to raise our children properly. It is upon us to make dua for our children, for Allah to protect them. And it's upon us to reward our children and to discipline our children and to guide our children and to give them structure in their lives to be strong Muslims with strong Islamic identities. And bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, if we raise them in the right way, in the correct manner, if we ask Allah to protect them, then hopefully they'll know how to use their minds, how to use their hearts in front of any agenda or any type of propaganda. I'm Muslim. If it's okay, but it's not Islam, right? It's not in the Quran and Hadith, then khalas, I'm okay, I'm fine. So this is our job, and that's another aspect of speaking on this topic is, what is the role of the parent with regards to the agenda of homosexuality, lesbianism, a person switching his gender, his sexual orientation, taking hormones, all right? different things to change what you are, what you look like, and how Allah, God Almighty, created you and made you to be. So the first line of defense is tarbiyah. If your children go to public school, you have to give them tarbiyah. Your children go to Islamic school, you have to give them tarbiyah. Your children are homeschooled, you have to give them tarbiyah. Your children are going to go to college, how you raise them and the values that you instilled in them is going to make a difference. And it can only be done at a young age. And I will say this, there are many different movements, or when we talk about LGBTQ and its movement, whether you like it or not, whether you disagree with it or not, there's certain things about it that you have to respect, unfortunately. You have to respect the dedication and the devotion to it and the sacrifice that they make to push what they believe in. And oftentimes, many of these people, unfortunately, they understand and they have a better grasp of many of our Islamic values that we have lost and strayed away from. And from them are two iconic statements that I want to give you for free. I'm going to end my speech with. The first is, التعلم في الصغر كالنقش في الحجر. And the second is, إنما تقبل الطينة الختمة وهي رطبة. Iconic statement that's been passed down generation after generation from the Muslims. التعلم في الصغر كالنقش في الحجر. Learning young is like chiseling stone. Learning at a young age, at a fresh age, is like chiseling stone. And the second statement is, clay only allows you to stamp it and to put your print on it, your design in it for the vase or the cup when the clay is wet and moist. And oftentimes you find the people who are supporters and proponents, people who are pushing the LGBTQ agenda, oftentimes they understand these wisdoms stronger than the Muslims, unfortunately. And that is, we're not talking to you because we know that you're not going to listen to us. You're mature. You've been a Muslim. We don't need you. But who's that guy sitting right next to you? He will listen. And he can't live in a world with no cartoons and no movies and no toys and no candy. He can't just eat basic, Raisin Bran or, corn flakes for breakfast. He needs something fun, an action figure, a hero. He needs an animal. He needs something. All right, so that's our agenda. And if we can teach your son to accept this and to believe in this, and we can normalize this to your son, the chances of him growing up and throwing it away and discarding it are slim to none. And that is because learning and teaching at a young age is like chiseling stone. This stone has been engraved how many hundreds of years ago, and you can still read it to this very day. It doesn't go away. It's not the same as ink or paint. It's not the same as embroidery. It's not the same as, chiseling stone. Granted, it's going to last. So just think about that. If you arm your children with the necessary weapons now, if you teach them what they need to be taught right now, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, they'll grow up with those proper Islamic values. And the clay, if you let it sit too long, if you let it dry, you remember back in the day, maybe the young kids, they still do it. Unfortunately, back in the day, whenever they would lay cement, they bring the truck, they're turning the cement, right? And they lay it down. You run out, what? And you write it on the sidewalk. Kids still do that today or not? You still do this? Unfortunately, right? You write something on the sidewalk. And you know that the window of opportunity between the cement or the cement being wet and moist, your parents not seeing you, the construction people not seeing you, it's a what? It's a slim window. But if you're quick enough, if you're bold enough to do that bad thing, your name will remain on the sidewalk for how long? For a very long time until they change it. And that is the concept of Islam, teaching your children, arming your children, educating your children, teaching them to be strong, to be bold, to be courageous. And the same applies to being an American. The American spirit is instilled in the child from a young age. Your father fought in this war for your rights. He fought, he died, he bled for you to have this freedom in the United States. So teaching children at a young age is powerful. Whatever you teach your child is between you and yourself. So this person is telling my child to be like this, to dress like this, to enjoy this, and I'm telling them Allah, His Messenger, the Sahaba, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be pleased, how God Almighty created you and formed you and fashioned you. So it's easy for us to blame them. It's easier for us to say they're bad, they're evil, but to look oneself in the mirror and ask himself, what am I doing with my children? How am I arming my children for the world in which they live, in which they're being aggressively engaged with this agenda of homosexuality, of lesbianism, of transgenderism, so on and so forth. So we got to get it together, guys, as parents. We have to get it together. We have to provide our children with good alternatives. And we have to teach them that good is what Allah and His Messenger have taught us, and evil is what Allah and His Messenger have declared to be evil. May Allah protect all of the Muslim youth. May Allah protect them from the scourge of LGBTQ and those who call to it. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. It's a little long, huh? معلش أطلت عليكم.
لا والله أحسن.
معلش.